We're back. So this third talk is envisioning Mary as an older woman, which is something that we don't see very often in images. And I really wanted to focus on it because I think we're largely a culture that focuses on youth and being young and the importance of being young and looking young and striving to be as young. And because of that and because of things like social media, it's not just about being youthful and young, but it's also about always being images of perfection. So and happy. And so social media, we want to post up there the things of us being happy and having great times and looking for each other. And I was just, is anybody a baseball fan here? Okay. My husband and I are giant baseball fans. Well, I'll out myself. We were giant baseball fans before we moved. We used to live in Wisconsin, southeast Wisconsin. And then we moved here, and we're pretty fickle. So we ditched the Milwaukee Brewers for the Dayton Flyers and have been Flyer fans for the last 5 years. But suddenly the Brewers were in the postseason. So we dug out our Brewers gear that we haven't worn in 5 years. That's not true. Martin reminded me we went to see the Reds earlier in the summer. So we dug out our gear, and I pulled it out, and we actually drove to Milwaukee last week to see them play because we're now super fans. I know, ridiculous. Although I'm so excited for Game 7 tonight. Yeah. How did I get there? I digress. Oh, our images of youth and usefulness and what we put. So we're at the game, and we bought the cheapest seats available. So we're in the last row of the 400 section. The batters and the pitchers look this big. But it doesn't matter because I'm like, we're at the game. This is so cool. And we're cheering them on. Okay. We're engaged in something larger than ourselves. Whatever. It's kind of goofy. And 2 rows in front of us, there's a family. It's a man, a woman, a baby that's, I don't know, between 6 and 9 months old, and then one of the baby's grandmothers. I'm not sure whose parent it was, but and the baby is just hanging out, whatever. She took a nap, and then during the 7th inning stretch, everybody stands up, and if you've been to a baseball game, what happens in the 7th inning? You sing! So you sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game and Roll Out the Barrel and whatever else. So her parents take the opportunity to take a selfie where they all look happy, and they seriously turned around like this so that you could see the ballpark in the back. Oh, I should have taken a selfie right there. That would have been funny. And as soon as they put the camera up like this, the cell phone, the baby smiled. And they would put the camera down, and the baby smile would go away. And they'd put the camera back up again, and the baby would smile. And I thought, oh my gosh, she is tiny, between 6 and 9 months. And she already knows that anytime that thing comes out, for which I'm not even sure she knows the name of yet, she should look happy. So I think we're a culture and a country that really focuses on looking happy and portraying these outward images of both happiness and youthfulness. And so I wanted to focus on Mary as an older woman because I don't think it's just us today. I think there's a subtle, maybe not so subtle hidden message. Look at all those images on the windows again. Of Mary only being a young woman. Yet Mary is left behind. I mean, Jesus did not start his ministry until he was 33, so she was about my age, and then in her mid-40s, and then who knows how much longer she lived before we believe she was assumed into heaven. So she had a solid life, and a good part of that life probably was without Jesus. It was here on earth, and a solid life of being with the first church, being part of that first church. So I wanted for us to take a minute to think about what might Mary look like as an older woman. What are what kinds of things do you think of? I should have done this before putting the image up. Don't cheat. Okay. What might they look like? Wrinkles? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Gray hair. I know at home our bottle of Advil grows larger and larger. Overweight? Yeah, she's no kidding. Like every image of Mary is super thin for the most part, and her face is all chiseled. There's no double chin, no saggy skin. People who are aging are like, yeah, we got that. I know at home our bottle of Advil or Tylenol keeps growing larger and larger, so you might actually put one of those in the image. Of the aches and pains that come with just bodily aging. All right, so to think about that, I pulled in this image, and this image is actually part of a series from an artist named Yolanda Lopez, and this book is written by Karen Davalos, and it takes the images of Yolanda Lopez, and she does a commentary on the various images. Yolanda Lopez is from San Diego and baptized as a baby as a Catholic, and throughout her life has gone through various religious experiences which have led to really different relationships with the Catholic Church, and those change back and forth. So it's enabled her to think of her art in ways that has very Catholic imagery, but sometimes isn't tied to what we consider I don't know what the word is, what we would put necessarily in a church as a Catholic image. So this is one of those images, and this is actually a picture of her grandmother, Victoria F. Franco, and it was made in 1978. But who is Franco kind of taking the symbols of here? Guadalupe! You know you weren't going to get a Latina without hearing at least a little about Guadalupe. But, and I'm Mexican-American, so yeah, I have a devotion to Guadalupe, but she's, like I said, she's not my favorite Marian image. And so Lopez wanted to talk about aging and dying, and so she took this image of Guadalupe, but it's a Guadalupe who is older, and her skin is sagging, and you see she's curvier, and her cinta, which is the symbol of Guadalupe being pregnant, has moved into a belt, and the angel's now in the background on the bottom with her crown ready because she's closer to death, or closer to the next level, and she's sitting on her mantle. She's like, okay, I'm tired of wearing it. And she's holding the rattlesnake. She's holding a rattlesnake, a diamondback rattlesnake, which the other image of Guadalupe has Guadalupe, Mary, stepping on the serpent's head. Here, the woman, Victoria, is holding the diamondback rattlesnake. Now, in Christianity, the snake has historically and traditionally symbolized temptation, deceit, fear, darkness, and evil. In Mesoamerican culture, the snake represents the cycle of life, death, rebirth, and renewal because it can shed its skin. So she's actually holding the skin of a rattlesnake, which she has skinned. So because she's the one who has skinned the rattlesnake, it also shows her level of power. It shows that she knows herself and the control of her own knowledge and her own body and her own being. So this is the image that I've brought for us to think about, just as we think about. And again, because there aren't that many images, it's possible for us to be able to envision this Mary in different ways. And so I'm grateful for Dávalos and her. I'm not grateful that she's not always felt welcome in the Catholic Church, but I am grateful for her experience to be able to shed some light for us to think about Mary in different ways. I also think that this relates very closely to the notion that Pope Francis tries to bring up repeatedly of the culture of death, and that we many times promote a culture of death and of killing, not of life, and that there's probably, this isn't Francis, this is me, a connection between our fear of death and a culture of death, that we don't want to think about death, that we try to stray from it. And so instead, we bring that about in different ways in our lives and in the lives of others. So these are some of the things I wanted us to think about. The other piece, and relating back to Guadalupe, is in June of this year, I went to visit my parents. My mom had foot surgery, and I went to spend some time with them. They live in El Paso, Texas. And my dad is a super fan for any kind of Marian apparition. If Mary is crying, bleeding, anything that could be a sign of Mary interacting in our world, he wants to be there, or he wants to go to the things that happen. So we have visited many, many places around the country where it's believed that images of Mary were crying or bleeding for various purposes. And so in June, when I was there in El Paso, he said, there's a crying Guadalupe in Hobbs, New Mexico. And Hobbs is about 2.5 hours away from where my parents live. So he says, let's go, Naomi, let's go. And he was trying to get my mom to go, but she still had her cast on and she wasn't so sure. But he finally convinces me, let's go to Hobbs. And then he says, but the people say that the roads are bad, so we can't really drive at night. And he tells this whole story. Okay. So we drive up to Hobbs. He drives there. I had flown in from New Jersey the night before, and I got in really late. So I fell asleep, and he drove. And I wake up 3 hours later. Mind you, the drive is about 2.5, 3 hours at the most. And I wake up 3 hours later, and he's like, we're about halfway there. And I thought, what in the world? Okay. So I later found out on our way back that you have to drive through the Guadalupe Mountains to get to Hobbs. And on the way back, I was driving, and he said, Naomi, you need to take the car out of cruise control and slow it way down because you're about to see some incredible images of life and beauty. And so he made me slow down. I'm hauling back at like 80 miles an hour because there's no real speed limit in New Mexico or Texas. I mean, there are posted ones, but whatever, they're kind of suggestions. So I'm driving back really fast because the other side of that is that people had told him that the road is really isolated at night, so you need to be near something because there's also hardly any cell phone service. Okay, so we slow down, and I realized that he had driven through those mountains at 30 miles an hour, and that's why the drive took so long, it made me appreciate the time with him in life much more. But so we went to see this crying Guadalupe, and She was at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church in Hobbs, New Mexico, which is a very small church. So they had actually taken her out and put her into the parish hall. And so this image is the setup that they had of the parish hall. And as I kept trying to take pictures of her, and the Jesus that's in the background kept showing up. So I was like, okay, you're just photobombing your mom, Jesus. Because it doesn't matter which picture I got, you can see parts of Jesus. So we went to see her, and the people, by the time we had gone, this had been happening for a while, and she had stopped crying, but they were getting thousands and thousands of people a day. And there weren't that many people when we were there. And the people who were there all wanted to know the stories. Why did you come? Why did you come? And they were magnificent stories of discipleships. People had driven 6, 7, 10 hours to see this crying virgin. And I asked them, what's important to you? And they're like, well, because Mary is with us, and Mary continues to be with us. And I thought, this is so significant, the tangibility of it, the ability to be able to touch something that seems to be coming from the heavens, and the belief that people have, the faith of the people, and the faith to follow those teachings, to me, is what's significant. Many people question, is that really crying? Did they just put oil on her? Whatever else. But to me, the significance of the faith of the people, and people willing to make these long drives just to spend, some of them stayed only for 5 or 10 minutes, and there's nothing to do in Hobbs, New Mexico. We had to go to Carlsbad, which is about an hour away, to get some food. So there's really not even a restaurant there. It's a little community. There's a couple of businesses. So this is the picture of the crying Guadalupe. You see Juan Diego next to it. And the man who is kneeling in the red shirt is my dad. I made him pose. He was getting ready to stand up. And I said, I'm going to need this picture for a retreat later this year. So he's very prayerful too. So he was happy to start praying again. And by this point we had driven 5.5 hours to be here, because we had to take a view of the Guadalupe Mountains, or at least he did, I didn't. Well, one of the things that I did while we were there was get some holy water from that church. And so I don't think you can see where the holy water was. It's actually right on the other side of the altar, the little holy water stand. So I brought some of that holy water today, and I'm going to add it into holy water that we have here, that we're going to use to bless your dirt, and to bless some rosaries that you will be getting a little bit later. So I'm going to add this in. And so now the relationship and the faith of all of those thousands of people who traveled to see this Guadalupe is being added to your dirt, which you have added all your feelings and emotions of goodness and kindness and safety in. Now I feel a little bit like I'm on a cooking show. And I don't get these things quite right.